let me just ask you all, is it, in terms of all of this, obviously it's early days, are you feeling that this is something that you're doing because the consumers are doing it and you're sort of chasing after them? Or is it something like the sort of the the first .com boom, where, you know, a bunch of people sat in a room and said, well, you know, here are these websites, let's figure out ways to get consumers to do this, that, and the other, and of course we all know how that turned out. From my perspective, I get the feeling that all of you are sort of like scrambling after these consumers who are changing their behavior by themselves. It's not like marketers are telling them to start going on Facebook or to start using their smartphones. They're already doing that, and you guys are all sort of like running after them, trying to figure out, well, suddenly they're doing all their shopping and all their research and all their making their buying decisions in such different ways, using such different media than they've used ever before. Can you just tell me a little bit about that? That sort of interests me in terms of where we are in this sort of cycle of cycling.
So I'll give you an example related to QR codes. We, as marketers and being informed marketers, being in the middle of everything that's going on here in New York, our organization was talking about QR codes for a full 18 to 24 months before we felt the time was right to roll it out for our customers. So our core customer at Macy's is a woman 25 to 54. And we've been really trying to be very patient about getting to the right level of her maturity and understanding of what her mobile device can do for her, and her acceptance and likelihood that she's going to take it out of her handbag and use it in the store in a way that's going to aid her shopping experience.
So I mean, did you send people up and down the aisles to sort of like watch the shoppers and see whether they pulled the phones out of their purses and pockets?
That, and we also trained our sales associates to coach customers, and the approach when we rolled out a campaign that involved QR codes pretty aggressively last spring was to start with a piece of education and explain to our customer through traditional advertising and in our stores exactly what this box with all the dots in it was and what benefit there would be to interacting with it. And not because we thought our customer might not have noticed it before, but that extra nudge and the value that she might see from Macy's and interacting with it was something that we knew we needed to coach along a little bit. And it was as much for our customers as it was for our sales associates. We have thousands of associates who are learning about this as they go as well, and we wanted them to understand that this could be a way they could approach customers, a way that they could provide more content and a richer shopping experience. So I think, at least internally, and I would imagine I speak for all of us, we're aware of what's going on in the every single breaking news item of all the new things that are coming, and figuring out when it's right to roll it out for our customer, not so that we're chasing them down, but so that their use of it will be dynamic enough and plentiful enough that it's worth our marketing spend.
And how do you do the balancing on that, where maybe the younger customers who knew what those were, how do you keep them from sort of rolling their eyes and saying, Grandma Macy's has to tell me what this is, and I've been using it, oh my, OMG, LOL. How do you balance that out from training and coaching and then not alienating? Or
you're right. I mean, I think, and I would be curious to hear about how Pepsi's managing it, because you guys have a substantial customer base that's younger. That has been a challenge for us at Macy's. The millennial customer has been more elusive, and as you're describing, how we fear that a younger customer is rolling their eyes in our store. That's something we're really trying to wrestle with and deliver information differently in the departments that are focused on that customer and through the digital experiences that target that customer. So
the departments like the Young Mrs. department or whatever you call those crazy
and Style Lab, yeah.
It's sort of like a laboratory. So like there'd be like a lot more tech savvy related kinds of signage and such in those departments.
We're working through that, and may even leapfrog over signage that does that, because frankly that's a customer who's coming in with the device in her pocket or in his pocket, and how do we get jump over the capital expenditure on big signs that in 5 years will feel just as dusty and old as paper signs might right now.
Right, or saying www. Yeah. Pepper, you were shaking your head vigorously.
Well, it's interesting. We've seen our customers evolve in terms of how they want to interact with us. A few years ago, we launched a lot of online communities that we built ourselves, and we hosted on Amex.com. And in fact, One of the ones I did with our first online community was around travel. And it was very successful. We found that people who were part of that community were more loyal to Amex. They spent significantly more on our card products than people who were not part of the community. But we also saw that it was hard to get them to come to a separate space. And so for us, our journey into Foursquare and Facebook and Level Up and Twitter and Tumblr and all the other YouTube and the other platforms where we're very active is really about going where they are, but then adapting the value that we provide to them in those new environments. So we're kind of playing to both our card members, but also our merchants. And how can we help our merchants get more exposure to our incredible card member base and help them reach a new customer in a new way? Because like Macy's, we tend to be skew a little bit older, and we want to increase our relevancy for a younger market. And so part of that is through our initiatives, the check-in offers through a Foursquare or Facebook, and then also other new products we're developing, such as Serve, which is a new peer-to-peer payment platform that I think is very interesting, that appeals more to millennials.
What is that?
Serve, it's a product that we came out with earlier this year.
You mean like SERVE?
That's right, yeah. Exactly. It's a peer-to-peer payment platform that you can fund with any type of payment source, your American Express card, your bank account, Visa or MasterCard, and then be able to pay money among your peers. So say you all go out to a great restaurant, one person doesn't have to be stuck with the bill. You can easily transfer the money among your friends. And so this obviously appeals to a younger audience. This is us developing products that reach out and speak and extend our value proposition, which is about enabling commerce, but doing it in a new fashion.
Yeah, Shiv.
In our case, we take a slightly different approach, and it's also because we have a younger consumer that we have to worry about. I think we all have to worry about that. But, so with us, the way we approach it is we feel it's very, very important for us to be in tune with digital culture and pace with it. And we do that for two reasons. One is we get a lot of, we develop a lot of goodwill with our consumers when we do that, when we're living the world, participating in the world just as the way they are. So we don't necessarily always wait for something to hit mass scale before we do something with it. So to give you an example, we partnered with Foursquare originally 2.5 years ago when they just had, I'd say, 1.5 million users. But it was an incredibly successful partnership for us, and it sort of served as a launch pad for us to do this much larger program with them today. And similarly, back in October, we did something really cool and interesting with Instagram and for Brisk, which was very much in tune with the Brisk philosophy and what Brisk was about, and Instagram was a perfect product for us to
Everybody
use.
here know what Instagram? Familiar with Instagram? Yeah.
Okay. So we try to pace with our consumers. That's one big piece of it. The other piece of it that really matters, and the reason why we stay extremely close to the startup and the VC community, is we often see unique innovations come out of them that we can apply immediately to our business and have a measurable benefit to our bottom line. So we sort of approach it slightly differently, and we've been very aggressive in that space. Yeah.
Barbara.
So I think from our perspective, because we also play in many parts of the ecosystem of the mobile marketing industry, just thinking about 2D barcodes. So we have Microsoft Tag. My colleague Adam Shapiro is here to, if anyone wants to find out more. So that idea of keeping pace of what consumers are doing and what the potential is, and looking at that globally. In a lot of cases, particularly when you think about 2D barcodes like Tag, you look at markets like Japan and see how it's integrated into everything they do. Now, granted, they are on a much different skew than the rest of the world, but we can look to that market for inspiration on where our market could go. And then when you look at some of the early numbers of how consumers are interacting with these different technologies, you can definitely see the inflection point and how it's growing much quicker than the earlier days of digital. And so in a lot of ways, I won't say we're chasing it, but the consumers are leading this revolution. And from our perspective, again, because we understand where things are going and making investments from a business perspective, our marketers are starting to do things like integrate Tag in most of our print advertising and really using it as a way to integrate. And that's given us tremendous insight into which publications are performing for us, which publications and which placements have the most interaction. And that's something that we weren't able to tap into before. So when we think about, again, where our consumers and whether it's
So it's sort of turning it into like direct marketing.
in a lot of
So
ways.
like the old days where
measurable.
the coupons and the print ads would have little codes at the bottom that would change depending on which newspaper or magazine the ad was running in.
Right, right. And in this case, we're offering, making that print ad alive. You can immediately see a case study video. I mean, for some of our products, that's how we sell our products. We need to tell a bigger story. So you can take that ad and make it alive and make it something measurable and actionable. And then we bring them into the mobile web or that piece of content experience and really tell more of the story than we could have done on a flat print ad. And whether we're talking to people at that C level, depending on what products, down to students. I mean, Xbox, we're kind of playing in the same space with Pepsi there. We have to try different things and understand where that audience is with their maturity and where they are. So I would say we have some of the same challenges as everyone on the panel. We just have to look at them, in silos to some extent because we're talking to different audiences about different brands within the company.
If I could add something, and to go back to your original question, I don't know when the tipping point is, but what I'm very confident about is that sooner or later, mobile is definitely going to be one of, if not the most important marketing platforms for us. And the reason is very simple. We don't sell products ourselves. We sell via our retail partners and our food service partners. And it's only through mobile that we truly, at the point of purchase, have a chance to talk to them and engage with them. And that's a mind-blowing opportunity for us. Otherwise, we're depending on all our retail partners. And as soon as adoption scales up, not in terms of mobile usage, we know that's, of course, extremely high, but in terms of consumers thinking about brands or engaging with brands through the product as media, and that becomes mass scale, I think it's going to, budgets are going to shift in a big way. It's going to be a game changer, I think, for all of us.
Yeah. Well, I think even having a physical space where, our spending doesn't indicate the degree to which we agree that mobile ends up being this amazing bridge between all this content that we've built in our e-commerce site that up until recently hasn't been accessible as part of the shopping experience in all of our stores. And this idea that the customer all along has been carrying this natural bridge that connects the two and then all of a sudden makes her shopping experience so much easier and so much more robust in terms of the information that informs it is something that has stars in our eyes.
So it's like there's that old joke about Brazil is the country of the future and always will be. They say that about mobile marketing in the sense that mobile is constantly being this is the year of mobile. Every January, Advertising Age has a special issue. This is the year of mobile, and then they hope that 52 weeks later you forgot because the following January there's another issue with the same thing on the cover. But you guys are saying that there really is definite signs that this is coming. In terms of, again, not the fact that people are using mobile because we're awash in it, but the idea that marketing is going to be done through the mobile channel in a much more aggressive, prominent kind of a way. You're all agreeing?
We're actually seeing a lot of usage of our mobile apps for servicing too, which is a different kind of marketing, but is actually really important to us because we are a service brand. That's really a core pillar of our brand, and we've seen incredible usage of our mobile app, and we actually launched our tablet on the iPad just last Friday, and that's been a great transformation of our business.
What can you do on that new app?
It mirrors what you can get on the iPhone right now, which is checking balances, seeing real-time transactions that have come in that are pending charges. And as that evolves, you can see a future where that becomes a place you can dispute charges there, but you can see how that evolves to become something even more dynamic over time.
And do you have a version of that for the merchants, or is this just for consumers, card holders,
members?
Card members.
Card members.
God forbid you should have to say card holder when you're talking about American Express.
Exactly.
Card member, please.
At this point, it's just for our card members.
But there is some possibility of
you could imagine a world where we have those types of similar services for our merchant base, which is, you know, the other half of our value proposition.
So you're all in agreement that this is definitely a real deal. It's not just the phony baloney that the mobile marketing.
Start with Mo.
No, but I think there's one big challenge, which is that as an industry, I actually believe we move very slowly. The advertising industry certainly, maybe not the technology industry. So you know, this year, for example, mobile ad spend is something like around 200 million. It's going to go to 300 million next year, but that's minuscule compared to the $26 billion in display advertising. Now, the only way I think we're going to see a big switch, a big change is when a few large advertisers wake up one morning and say, you know what, we're going to move the big bucks. We're going to take a gamble on this, and then the results come in. And until that happens, it's just the way the system works. We do things in a very measured, steady fashion. So I think that's a big factor.
I guess, you know, part of the feeling is I think that people really need to be, they need to feel comfortable with it. They need to feel that they're not going to get fired for doing it. Most of you in the audience look too young to remember this, but there actually was a time when the cable television industry had to fight to convince marketers to buy commercials on cable television. And there was a magical day one day when Procter & Gamble woke up one morning and sort of, as you say, and said, we're going to start running commercials on Lifetime and USA and Bravo, not just on CBS and NBC and ABC. And that was the birth of cable. The cable, that's why we have hundreds of channels now, all with reality shows about housewives. Lucky us. But there was a moment, and it's sort of hard to look back. I mean, this was like 35 years ago. Sort of hard to think that there was a time when advertisers were afraid to buy time on cable television, but there was. So we're looking at being in a similar place, but you're saying it's gonna happen as slowly, or you think people are gonna get sort of poked into moving faster on that?
I think we exactly need that moment. Otherwise, it's going to happen very slowly. Yeah.
How much? I wanted to ask you all. How much do you feel that that privacy issues are keeping that in the slow lane right now for mobile or for social? Or do you think that that's being hashed out sufficiently to the point where it's not going to be an impediment, or maybe younger consumers have a different attitude about sharing information, and it's really sort of a hang-up of the older people that's going to fade in time? How do you feel about the privacy issue? Because a lot of people that we talk to say that to them is a reason why there is this sort of hesitancy to move more aggressively into mobile and social.
Well, I'd say a couple things. One, I think it's up to the platforms themselves. For example, Facebook. On Facebook right now, you can't market mobilely. Their mobile app is not friendly to marketers. And so I think it's up to the platforms to actually develop solutions for brands like us who want to be able to reach our customers and prospects and our merchants on those platforms. I think that's part of the issue of why the industry is not developing, is that we don't have the solutions there. I think from a privacy standpoint, that's something, obviously, your data is the most important thing to us, and you cannot imagine the internal hoops that we go through when we do marketing programs to ensure that your data will never be breached and is very safe. So that's, with our Link Like Love program, for example, we never share any data with Facebook. They don't get your card information. They have no visibility into your transaction history. So that's something that's very, very important to us. And I think the industry has to be very careful about how that safeguards moving forward.
I mean, I think privacy is one of those things as it's emerging that people are very liberal about it until they're not. And they expect the people who hold their information to be much more conservative than they might be as they're out in the space, and for the consumer to feel that it's something that they're in control of. on whatever level of the spectrum they are in terms of privacy.
So is it like not double standard isn't the right term, but do you feel there's like two sets of rules maybe in terms of the users versus the holders of the?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I think we as marketers, to the degree that we want to be perceived as part of the consumer vocabulary, need to be perceived as being liberal and chill about, how comfortable we are with things getting out there. But when it comes to data, and it comes to transactions, and it comes to the things that people are very, very protective about getting out there, that we can demonstrate that we respect that too. So it's I think in terms of credit, a very similar line as we walk.
So it's sort of the idea that some people are fine with the idea that when they're in the city they've never been to before and they use their American Express card, they suddenly, American Express reaches out to them and says, hey, is this really you? We're kind of surprised that you're in Walla Walla. We've never charged anything for you in Walla Walla before. But then there are other people who get like PO'd about it and say, leave me alone, I'm going into Starbucks. Why are you wasting my time asking me?
I think as long as we use the data to be relevant. So for instance, at Macy's we're doing a ton of direct mail where we're versioning based on consumer shopping habits and the data that we've collected of their transactions.
Can you explain what versioning means?
So we have a piece of direct mail that will shoot 80 pages of direct mail, but individual consumers will get a version, and we now are doing thousands and thousands of versions where a consumer might get 24 pages, but they're the 24 pages that are relevant to them based on all their transactions. So that's
so it'd be like the old days of the zoned advertising edition of a magazine, where if you're in the Midwest, you get a different edition, different ads than if you're in the Southeast or
at a micro level. And this, in some ways, this is how we are being local. We're taking from what was local.
And how micro does that get? Does it get down to like an individual person, or like people in a neighborhood, or?
It's based on shopping habits. So two people living next door to each other could get completely different pieces of direct mail. Kristen, remind me, it's several thousand, like tens of thousands of versions of one direct mail piece at this point. Wow. So we were a little nervous that people might feel some resistance to us knowing this much about their shopping habits to send them a direct mail piece that combines children's clothing with crock pots with men's shoes. And yet customers have given us that permission because we're doing it through what is a private communication with them. We've debated to what degree do we take that level of versioning out into digital advertising. I think retargeted ads are another thing that a lot of us are experimenting with, where you're serving people a product that they've obviously viewed and that their cookie is, we keep waiting for customers to tell us, I don't like it that you're chasing me around with products that I've shown some interest in.
How many people does that freak out and upset in the audience? Do people get upset about that when they're online? Yeah. One guy, that's it. Everybody else is fine with that, yeah?
And I think people complain about it when it's not relevant to them. It's because it isn't offering them value. But when things are actually, if there's a pair of shoes that I have been considering purchasing for the last week and they keep chasing me around, well, that's relevant, and the odds of converting to that are much higher.
I guess it creeps me out when they keep asking me to buy what I already bought. The online, the ads on the when you're online. You ordered something on Amazon, and then they keep asking you to buy it again, like 24 hours later, and it's not something that you've consumed in 24 hours.
Well, it's no longer relevant to you. So
I
think it is on us as data holders to make sure that we keep our pencils very sharp and that we're using the data to inform something that's still relevant.
Shiv, you said you're about to say something.
Yeah, in our case, I'd say it's a little different because we don't have those same challenges of having to deal with credit card data and financial data like that. What we've found is, one is we get practically no complaints, about when we get more and more personal in the social, local, and mobile space. I mean, we absolutely follow every law by the book, but what we do, we don't get any complaints, and we're getting more and more.
Can you give an example of what? Like on Facebook, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll sort of build on the direct mail example. So we have massive email databases. And now we target our consumers via email programs by their affinity. So the folks who are really interested in the Yankees will get a certain version of an email campaign versus the folks who are really interested in the New England Patriots are not even interested in a baseball. So it starts at that level and then it keeps building. Where it gets really interesting is the kind of things we're able to do on the back end. And this is where we work very closely with our own lawyers and legal teams. But to give you an example, we just launched on Friday this national program with CVS. It's in every CVS in the country, whereby when you buy a Pepsi, you get 5 cents go towards Feeding America, the nonprofit. But if you check in on Facebook via Facebook Places at the very same time, 10 cents goes to Feeding America. And there's point of sale information, promoting it, all of that stuff. Where this gets very interesting is when the results come in, so this just launched on Friday, and we're able to look at a map of the US and see where did people check in the most, what drove them to check in which locations was there better point of sale promotion driving the check-ins,
Wow.
and then use that to drive further marketing efforts. Where are people more cause marketing oriented or attached to versus other places. Now that's all anonymous data that we're using, so we're safe and good with that, but it's extremely, extremely valuable to our business as a whole.
And is that because now that you own your bottlers, that you can deal with that on a local, extremely local level now? You can go send the truck out and put twice as many Pepsis in a cooler on the corner of 87th and Amsterdam because so many people are checking in there or whatever, or?
Well, the bottlers think they own us, but that's another topic. What it does allow, absolutely, is for much greater efficiencies and much greater coordination at a local level, no question.
See, what also is interesting to me is all these panelists, they wear multiple hats. Microsoft is a technology company that's coming up with some of these things that Microsoft then has to deal with as a marketer and decide what to use and what not to use. And American Express deals with the consumer, but also with the merchants and so on, and bottlers, and it's just fascinating because you've got all these media choices and all these different ways to communicate, and the companies themselves are operating in different ways at different times, and you're not a retailer, but you are, and that's just.